Story 1. Am I the a-hole for calling an ambulance, which got my coworker fired? I, 27 female, was at a group work training for my job this past weekend. The company put a bunch of us up in a hotel and had us attend a day-long presentation about our goals for the next quarter. For context, we're in sales, it's highly competitive, and the group consisted of mostly older employees, with me being the youngest. After a full day of meetings, a few of us decided to get dinner at a restaurant down the street from our hotel. We carpooled, and when we arrived, one of the older ladies, Deborah, 50-ish, was already there standing at the bar. We invited her to join us for food, but she declined, and we moved on with our night. I had 2 beers with dinner, so I'm not judging, but as we finished our meal, it became clear that Deborah was plastered. She was stumbling, even though the ground was level, and slurring pretty badly. As we left, Deborah came outside with us and reached for her keys. I immediately stopped her and said I'd drive her back to our hotel. She agreed, but as she went to grab the passenger door handle, she missed and fell straight back onto the pavement, hitting the back of her head. I don't mean to be gross, but it sounded like someone dropped a carton of eggs. I checked, and not only was she passed out, but she was bleeding from her head. Everyone panicked, and I grabbed my phone to call 911. One of the younger guys stopped me and said, "Help me get her in the car. We'll get her room key out of her purse and just put her in bed." I was bewildered and said, "But she has a head injury. She's bleeding. What if she cracked her skull?" I'm no doctor, but if you go to sleep with a head injury, don't you not wake up? I'm pretty sure I learned that in school, and some of the other employees agreed with me, so I called the ambulance. Paramedics took Deborah to the hospital, and she survived, though she was in really bad shape when I checked up on her the next day. Here's where I may be the a-hole. Our managers found out that Deborah was hospitalized for overdrinking while technically at a work function, and they fired her on the spot. Everyone also found out that I was the one who insisted on calling an ambulance. The older employees are all saying I did the right thing and that she could have died, but the younger ones are calling me a snake and saying I got her fired on purpose because she was competition. Am I the a-hole? Comment A. Not the a-hole. Better jobless than dead. You did exactly right. I'm sure the coworkers giving OP crap would have also given her crap if she didn't call the ambulance and the coworker died. She did the right thing for sure. If they dragged her back to the hotel, put her to bed, and she died overnight, they'd be fired and arrested. OP saved everyone's bum. Comment in B. Not the a-hole. She was in a life-threatening situation. You did what you should have done, regardless of what implications there are to the job. Comment C. Not the a-hole here. You did the right thing. Smashing your head against the ground can be fatal from even small falls, and she got fired from something she did do. And the fall, and the fact that someone probably would be responsible and call for help, was a product of her overdrinking on a job function. For Pete's sake, what's the alternative? Let's risk death or brain damage to minimize the chance of losing a job. Agreed. OP didn't get her fired. Her own awful judgment calls did. If you're away at a work function, it's not a solid strategy to get so hammered you can't function. Head injuries are nothing to play with, and had they taken her to the hotel and tucked her in and she died in her sleep, then what? OP should tell every one of them she dodged a manslaughter charge for them, and they're welcome. Not sure what the actual charge would be, but it wouldn't be nothing. My ex's dad was backing out of his driveway in the winter, and he saw the man last second and stopped. But the man slipped when he panicked and died almost instantly from hitting his head. It wasn't a big dramatic thing, just a fall from standing. Comment D. Not the AI hole. Any coworker that gives you shade, just reply, "So what you're telling me, in effect, is that no matter what the scenario, especially if it's on company time, if you're hurt and possibly near death, I should just leave you?" That's super empathetic. I'm sure Deborah is more glad to be alive than worried she got fired. She's old enough to manage her crap, and if she can't, then this was her wake-up call. Y'all need to stop acting like we're still in high school and being responsible adults is snitching. Grow up. Until you can, don't bother talking to me about adult behavior, since you've clearly not reached that mark yet. What a bunch of morons. They're acting like the start of a goddamn killer thriller movie. Hide the body. Put it in bed. No one will know. Hopefully, a moment of consideration will lead them to believe they were just reacting out of fear, and their current reaction is from guilt and shame that out of everyone, you were the only actual adult. You stopped her from driving drunk, potentially killing more than just herself, and then seeing to her medical needs when she effed herself up. Do not let anything they say get to you. Comment E. Not the AITAH hole, but she wasn't hospitalized for drinking. She was hospitalized for a head injury, which could have happened without the booze, just lower risk, but still could have happened. Poor Deborah. But you are in no way, shape, or form an AITAH hole. You done the right thing. And I hope this experience doesn't deter you from calling next time, because that absolutely can be deadly. There's also no reason why the other employees needed to tell the managers the details of her falling. The ambulance ride didn't get her fired. Whoever told the managers she was drunk did. If they all just stuck to the story that she fell and not given the details as to why she fell, then the ambulance is a moot point. She could have just as easily gotten fired if they took her back to the room, if people shared the details of the fall. Also, this seems like a wrongful termination. Considering multiple employees were drinking, it seems unfair that only one would be fired. I know this is a business trip, but either drinking was allowed during that time period or it wasn't. Story 2. Am I the a-hole here for telling my supervisor's sobbing wife to leave the office? I, 29 female, recently scored a nice job at a real estate small business. Everyone is very friendly, and I like it there a lot. Unfortunately, my supervisor, mid-30-ish, male, is, shall we say, problematic. Let's call him Gene. I've had several small issues with Gene involving sexist language, particularly about our other pregnant coworker, but that's beside the point. Point being, he's kind of an a-hole sometimes. So yesterday, Gene got some bad news. After very loudly screaming at someone on the phone for over an hour, he goes out into the hallway and tells me and another coworker, also loudly, he is not hiding this, that apparently he lent a very large sum of money, 5 figures, to his dad, who told him he would invest it in what was basically a get-rich-quick scheme. To no one's shock but Gene's, said scheme didn't work out, and now Gene is 6 figures in total debt. At this point, I say, man, that sucks, and go back into my office because I am behind on my work. This is where the sobbing wife comes in. My office shares a wall with Gene, and the walls there are paper thin. I can hear everything, no matter how quietly people talk. Not that quiet meant anything here, as while I was attempting to catch up on work, I start hearing Gene breaking the news that he effed up to his wife, who also happens to be recently hired by our business. Hired by Gene. Funny that. The wife is understandably audibly upset, and she starts crying. This makes Gene angry, and he starts yelling at her to suck it up and calm down because he'll deal with it, and she never has any faith in him, which makes her cry harder. And meanwhile, I have been staring at a very important email about to be sent for the past 3 minutes. Unable to concentrate due to sobbing woman and a-hole man. So I got up and knocked on his door. Opening it revealed a crying woman and Gene, to whom I very quickly rushed out. I'm really sorry. I know you're going through stuff, but can you please take this somewhere else? I was talking directly to Gene, but his wife seemed spooked and a little offended and pissed off. They both quietly skedaddled, and I didn't see her for the rest of the day. I hold absolutely zero sympathy for Gene. He was an idiot who wasted his money on get-rich-quick schemes doomed to fail, doing so while knowing he has a wife and 2 young kids to care for. He's barely been at this job for longer than I have. My real actual boss is a really cool dude, and my overall vibe from Gene is pretty rancid. TLDR, I got fed up with hearing my supervisor scream at his distraught wife over a F-up he did at work, so I told them to take their drama elsewhere. I don't give a F about supervisor, but I feel pretty miserable about being short with the wife. Comment A, not the a-hole, but I do recommend you report the incident to a supervisor before Gene finds a way to fire you. His workplace conduct was completely inappropriate and warrants a complaint. The office is not couples counseling, and they were on the clock. Not the AI hole. I agree with you completely. Gene's behavior was unprofessional, and the workplace is no place for couples counseling, especially on company time. I strongly recommend reporting this incident to a supervisor or HR as soon as possible. This ensures that there's a record of his inappropriate conduct, and it protects you in case he tries to shift blame or retaliate. Comment B, not the AI hole. You're entitled to a work environment where you can focus without being distracted by personal drama. Gene brought his personal issues into the office and made them everyone's problem. While it's unfortunate that his wife was caught in the crossfire, your request was reasonable and directed at the inappropriate behavior, not her personally. Gene's lack of professionalism is the real issue here. Comment C, not the AI hole. It's completely reasonable to ask for a professional environment where you can focus on your work. Gene was out of line for handling such personal drama in the office, especially so loudly, and his behavior toward his wife was inappropriate and unprofessional. You didn't attack her, you simply asked them to take it elsewhere, which is fair. Your workplace isn't the right setting for that kind of conflict. Comment D, in a real estate office? And 3 minutes of staring at your email is all the time you'd give before you essentially tell them to calm down or leave? Yeah, but you're the a-hole here. I get it that they are not people you like, but your empathy level is entirely absent. Would you want to be treated that way if you made a terrible decision with a life-destroying outcome because you misjudged badly? Exactly. OP threw in all this other stuff about how bad her manager was because deep down, she knows it was an AI hole move to barge into the office. I'm sorry, but in any office, it is extremely inappropriate to be having this sort of discussion. If you have a crying woman and a man screaming about their personal issues on the clock, they should be made to leave the office until they can get their personal issues under control, especially if it is loud enough others can hear. Comment E. Gonna say everybody sucks here except for the wife. I get he's a piece of work, and you did just hear him screaming for an hour before, but have a bit more tact when dealing with situations like this. You can wait after knocking or go elsewhere for a few minutes to send the email. Going from here, document the incident and report it if possible. Document every incident like this. And if you still feel bad, apologize to the wife privately for your conduct. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for trying to get my neighbors to not block my front door? I, 32 female, live in NYC. I recently moved into a small building, 3 stories, 6 apartments in total. My apartment is a ground floor unit. From move and a neighbor, 40 female and 40 male, has been storing their large stroller in front of my front door, which poses problems every time I have to come and go from my apartment. It is also against fire code and explicitly forbidden in the building's leases. The stroller is there every day, unless their kid, 3 male, decides he doesn't want to walk. One day when I heard them leaving it there, I introduced myself and politely said them leaving their stroller there was causing me issues and it is against the city's fire code, and asked them to no longer keep their stroller in front of my front door. The female neighbor gave me excuses that they live on the 3rd floor, but the male neighbor straight up raised his voice at me while I was holding my infant daughter. The woman said as a compromise she'd fold the stroller when leaving it in front of my door. As time went on, the stroller was never folded up and continued to block my door. As it is against fire code and explicitly forbidden in the lease, I decided to reach out to property management for help resolving this issue. I just want to be able to safely come and go from my apartment. The day the property management enforced this on these neighbors, the female neighbor rang my doorbell and proceeded to refuse to speak to me and called her mother. Her mother then berated me on speakerphone and said I should have spoken to them first, ignoring me when I said I did. She then kind of threatened me, saying I complained about the wrong people. I was stunned and couldn't believe this was happening. All I could muster was insisting it is against fire code and no one gets to break fire code. I am baffled by this behavior. I found it a bizarre confrontation, and I didn't know adults could act this way. I've never had issues with neighbors before. I have a child younger than theirs and empathize with their situation, but their kid is massive and able to walk. They could just have an umbrella stroller like I do. I just wanted access to my front door. Am I the AI hole? TLDR neighbor in small apartment building breaks fire code and blocks my front door and ignores polite personal requests to stop. I take it up with building management. The neighbor initiated bizarre confrontation with her mother on speakerphone, making vague threats. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I appreciate the outside perspective. I didn't think I was the AY hole, but I do have hardcore people-pleasing tendencies, and it was very clear my actions hurt people's feelings, and it gave me self-doubt. The reason I engaged with the mother on the phone at all is bizarre too. It's all just too weird, and I'm reeling a little lol. The female neighbor has an unusual way of speaking. I haven't been able to work out if it is an accent or what. When she put the mother on speakerphone, I had a sinking thought that maybe the female neighbor is deaf and needs someone to talk for her. And I felt bad that maybe I'd made a deaf person feel victimized when they can't speak up for themselves. But like she clearly wasn't deaf, her mother was just on speakerphone with no video, and she had zero issues following the conversation. Apart from this incident and the other crappy neighbor stuff this woman and her man have pulled, they seem like normal functional adults. The man does not have an unusual way of speaking. I don't think her unusual way of speaking is really a factor in whether I'm the AI hole, and I have been so eager to be polite and respectful. It became clear very quickly the phone call wasn't really about helping in communication, but just messy people expressing their anger as much as possible. But yeah, that's why I let the phone call happen. Messy. Comment A. Not the a-hole. Why didn't you just close your door on these a-holes? Just report them again for harassment to property management. Start videoing any interaction with them. 100%, I was kicking myself for not recording it. It wasn't a long interaction, but it went on too long. I kept hoping I could make it rational. I'd recommend to anyone recording interactions if you think it might get pear-shaped. Comment B. Not the a-hole, the getting mom on the phone tells you all you need to know about the maturity of a 40-year-old person. Yeah, the 40 female neighbor rang my doorbell and proceeded to refuse to speak to me and called her mother. Made it very clear that at 40 years old, she is still very immature. Comment C. Not the AI hole, but I would consider telling the property manager you've been threatened. Of cousin, that could escalate and make things worse. But you are being bullied. I'd try to get out of the lease and move. Comment D. Not the AI hole. Your neighbors are really entitled. No normal person would want to leave their property outside a stranger's door for days on end. Consider reporting them again to building management for the confrontation. This kind of behavior was completely uncalled for. Comment E. You're much nicer than I would have been. When they didn't comply with the polite request, I would have chucked the stroller outside. Comment F. I'd stop quoting fire code, to be honest. Even if it wasn't against code, blocking your door every day is just flipping rude. I would tell them that as you've asked them to stop and they haven't, the next time it's in front of your door, you're putting it outside. And then do it. Or double down on the fire code. Get some firefighters to cut the stroller into pieces to rescue you. Comment G. Tell them that they'll be liable for the cost of treating your injuries and healthcare if you leave the house and trip over it. Take a picture. If there's an apartment manager, report it to them via email so there is a paper trail that you've told them to move it. I did this with a neighbor who let their dog run rampant in the building despite rules to carry or leash dogs in all common areas. I told the building manager and neighbor that if I tripped and fell because the dog was running loose under my feet, I would hold them liable and sue the building manager and neighbor for personal damages and healthcare costs. It stopped pretty quickly. Comment H. I'm sorry, honey. I'm not laughing at you or an obviously frustrating situation, but the neighbor came to the door to have her mother confront you by phone. Sometimes people are just so unbelievably ridiculous, it just makes you laugh. Not the AI hole. It's a funny situation. I'm still in disbelief that it happened.